Financial advisors help Australians live better lives, and we're great at it. But what about us? For us to thrive in the coming years, I'm here to ask a very big question. How can we live better, run better businesses, and help more clients along the way? My name is Jessica Brady, and I would love for you to join me as I listen and learn from experts who answer these very big questions. I am lucky enough to record most of my podcasts on Gadigal land.
Zurich is the proud partner supporting this episode. As one of Australia's largest life insurers, Zurich encourages the promotion of positive conversations leading to a more sustainable future for life insurance, committed to championing financial advice through education and research-led market insights.
Well, for my very first podcast, I thought who better than the man handing over the Spiritual XY podcast baton, Mr. Fraser Jack. What is clear from our chat is that the man has seen the industry from so very many angles. He's heard so many stories of success and endurance, and he has some big plans to shake things up for us for the better. And I'm here to learn all about it. Also, please enjoy me mucking up the intro. I will get better. I hope. And now we have a very, very familiar voice for those of you that have been listening to the XY podcast for a long time, and that is no other than the Fraser Jack.
Wow,
Hello, Fraser.
Hello, I should change my name to No Other Than.
No other than the wonderful Fraser
right.
Jack.
Yeah, great.
Missed
What a
that.
lovely introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you as my first podcast guest as we do a bit of a changing of the guards. I felt like it was absolutely essential to have you here
Wow,
today.
fantastic. And the irony of all this is when I first started podcasting back in, 2017, I think it was, you were my first guest on the podcast.
What a funny little circle it's been. Well, thank you. And today I am very excited to sort of talk about what we're doing, both in terms of the podcast, but also you more broadly. And then we're going to wrap up with some questions about, Fraser, outside of XY Advisor, just Fraser, which I'm very delighted and excited to do. So, as you know, I'm taking over the Thursday podcast.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited and slightly terrified because I feel like I have very big shoes to fill. It's nerve-wracking because, people are giving up their time, and I feel like I've got quite a big job to make sure that I extract as much amazing insights and info to deliver to this lovely community that we have. And I'm feeling the weight of responsibility firmly on my shoulders.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's too much responsibility. I think the community will be pretty much looking forward to hearing from you.
Woohoo. So, should we talk about what we're going to do?
Yes, let's do it. Tell us a little bit about it, because obviously the XY podcast has grown over the years. We've got Monday morning market updates brought to you by Milford. We've got Benny Nash taking over on the Tuesday. We're doing a little bit of deep dive content into particular topics on Wednesdays, which aren't every Wednesday, but they come out fairly regularly, which you'll still hear me on. And of course, now we've got Jess doing the Thursday podcast.
Yes. And so because now we've got a lot more diversity in terms of who's delivering these podcasts, Clay sort of set me a big task and said, do whatever you like, which I felt like was too broad for my brain. And so I sat and thought about, what would I like to use this platform or this opportunity to deliver? And so I've thought about it in a couple of different ways. We've obviously been through a pretty intense few years. Do we not say that, though, every time? Every time it just sort of ratchets up. I feel like for the last 14 years that I've been in the industry, I think we've just been constantly saying that, which just tells me the temperature has been rising and rising and rising. But, yeah, given it's been such an intense few years, I've thought about how do we live a great life? And I want to really go into it in a couple of different ways. So I want to talk about how we can look after ourselves as people, because I think we really need to, and we need to put our oxygen mask on first, and sometimes we're not good at that, me included. I want to think about how can we help our clients or our members live really great lives. And then I want to talk about how can we build better businesses. And I feel like one without the other is no good. And so I want to get quite deep on really exploring what I think is going to be quite gritty conversations, because as you might know about me, Fraser, I'll go anywhere and I'll go deep.
Very good. And you're absolutely right about this concept of it has been a crazy few years, but it's always been a crazy few years for the last 20 odd years that I've been in it. So, and let's just imagine that's going to be business as usual moving forward. So this concept and this idea about focusing on, living a great life, your personal self, and understanding how that then works into your business life, and how both you as a human being and you as a business both operate. So I think it's content that's both relevant now but ongoing into the future.
And selfishly, I think why I'm doing this is because I don't know the answer. Maybe no one knows the answer, but I have always put one at the top sort of pyramid, and I don't think it should be a pyramid, because it then means the others fall behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the Venn diagram, isn't it? They both need to have some sort of focus, and it's about making sure. So I think it's a great topic. I think it's a great idea, and I'm really looking forward to listening to the episodes.
Woohoo. Okay, enough about what I'm going to be doing. I am really keen to talk through you, because one of the beautiful ironies is that you have been a regular voice in the XY community, but I actually think that because you are very good at extracting insights from other people, we don't really get the opportunity to sort of ask you a lot of those questions. And so I'd love to sort of, I guess, get you to go back in time and tell us more about, what is your story?
Yeah, thank you. So my story is I was actually born and brought up in New Zealand, and so sometimes you'll hear that through as a funny little accent that tends to come through every now and then in a word, although I think most people in New Zealand think I've got an Australian accent. So I was brought up there, but my first career was being a chef. So being creative, I love the creativity of cooking and producing something and doing everything you can to, and it was always if you've ever watched MasterChef, it's all about the getting into the down into the detail and looking at what you can do that's slightly different and amazing, and of course back then I thought it was always all about the food, and now I have a different opinion. I think it's all about the experience that people have, the client experience that goes on. It's not necessarily just about the one little part of going out to eat. So from that, natural progression straight into being a financial advisor, of course, as you do.
Course.
But that really led the way that I was a self-employed chef working in all sorts of places around in Sydney, doing what that was called Chefs on the Run at the time. And I was a contract chef, and I worked in a lot of hotels and industries, and I'd loved the whole world of, finance, and, I had all my insurances in place, and I was talking to people all the time about, purchasing and stocks and shares. And so it was really, really easy to give financial advice as a chef. There was just, in passing conversation, you could tell people what they should be doing and their savings plans and all these sorts of things. Super easy. I imagine it's pretty easy for Uber drivers these days as well. And then, so then I went back and studied and became a financial advisor, and was given an opportunity to opened my own business from scratch, having never worked in the profession before. And back in those days, it was here is a telephone. Here is if it was before financial services reform kicked in. So it was the old customer information brochures, which is the PDS that you know today. And it was a little bit of training on what was in them and how the policies responded, and how superannuation worked, and go out and invent your own wheel and talk to people and ring people and have conversations. So it was a bit of a school of hard knocks, starting from zero clients and no real system.
So hang on. Firstly, I didn't know you were a chef. I feel like that is a great skill just to have in life. Are you telling me that you were crazy enough to transition from being a chef, giving part-time advice in the kitchen, to literally going into your own business, presumably alone with no clients?
Yep. And we're talking 2001, 2002.
You're wild. What was that like? Tell me about those early years.
It was interesting. It wasn't something I'd ever done before, so it was certainly a big challenge. And there was, I think there was plenty of obstacles in the way, but you just keep pushing through, because you knew that you had belief in what advice did for people and how it worked, and so that's all you focus on, the fact that you knew this thing that other people should know about it, and so just like doing a podcast or whatever it might be, you open your mouth and you spoke about it.
I'm so amazed, because I thought I was completely insane, having jumped out of sort of the BDM side of things into starting an advice business in 2017. but
don't get me wrong.
imagine.
Don't get me wrong. You are insane. No, I'm only kidding. No, but you do have to be.
Well.
You do have to be slightly insane and back yourself in a way, I guess.
Okay, so tell me. So then you built a business from nothing, from scratch, and then what happened?
Yeah, built a business from scratch. I was working with another planner who actually passed away, so I ended up purchasing that business as well. So both starting my own and purchasing a book, and put those two together, and ran that business for I want to say about 13 years, and then. I was doing a lot of work with the Association of Financial Advisors. I was on the board there, and I was sort of got to the point where I was ready for a little bit of change in my life. So, it wasn't enough constant ongoing change, and essentially looked at thinking to myself, I'm going to sell this or exit this business and do something slightly different. But obviously I was looking around and I wanted to do something within the financial services sector itself, and my passion was really around the technology and trying to simplify technology, and I felt that the advice process, many of us felt this, that the advice process wasn't as effective and efficient as it could have been when the use of technology. So that was sort of where my passion lay, and I sold and exited the business. From there, I went on and worked with a licensee for 12 months, and really got to understand the pains and the wins and the idea of what goes on within the licensee land, and from understanding how AFSLs work and what their main purpose is and what their journey is like. And then from there, I spent 3 years in advice technology and reg tech and advice tech, and for the last 12 months or so, I've just really been consulting in that space. Talking to businesses about what they can do in both goals-based advice and technology, and working obviously on the podcast still. Love podcasting. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a career running a podcast or being a host of a podcast. It's more of I love the saying that people do podcasts. That people don't do podcasts for the money. They do it to make a difference. So I think that's what most podcasters are at.
What do you mean? This is my new career trajectory. This is it for me. What are you talking?
A free podcast, excellent. So there you go. So it's so that was podcasting, and then so now I'm working on a few interesting projects, consulting, and got some future ideas that I want to bring out. So.
Amazing. And what's so interesting is, normally consultants haven't sat on all of the sides, and just listening to you. Having thought I knew what it was like to be an advisor, now being one, I know that I had no idea what it was like to be an advisor, and so that breadth of knowledge is quite rare. Can we though? Because it's so funny. I've known you for so long, and I'm learning so much, which is fascinating. Can we go back for a sec? I want to ask you something, but it's a bit much. So you just tell me if you want me to back off, and I can absolutely back off. So. You bought a book from a business. Was it a business partner who died?
It was. So it was a colleague. Yeah. So somebody in the same licensee that was working out of the same office.
We don't talk about this stuff enough because it's not nice. But we all know that in our world, sometimes we have to have pretty interesting chats. And so, given that we have, let's call it an aging advice population. I think we should talk about this if you don't mind. Did you guys have a succession plan? Was this always the plan? What was that like for you? I'd imagine that would have been wildly traumatic, and you would have had to comfort clients that weren't yours at the same time as consult staff and yourself. Like, what was that like, Fraser?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about succession planning, we talk about the concept of retirement, obviously, as the first area. Somebody wants to retire or step back from their position or their role, which is great. It's a great way to do it because you've got that continuity of, the transition and the handover and all those sorts of things. And there is, there's always a reason or a purpose, why that's happening. There could be a transition out where somebody says their purpose is to get out of the profession and not do that anymore. But then there's also got the third area of that is when somebody's passing away, and that can be either a transition period because in my particular circumstances, the person who I purchased the business from got cancer, got sick, and spent 12 months fighting the disease, and then lost his battle. So it was plenty of conversations that took place over a period of time that would be this is what happens, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, and then there's the other end of that spectrum, if you like, where somebody unexpectedly passes away, and then all of a sudden they either may or may not have a plan in place. And there's no reason why advisors can't have that conversation up front now that says, look, let's just do an agreement in place that if something happens to you or something happens to me, that you'll, purchase my business for this valuation methodology. So it's not a figure, it's just based on, we're going to do it as a such and such times blah, whether it's EBIT or renewal. I mean, we're not talking about business valuation specifically in this one, but and then there's then you see succession plans in place where if you've got a larger business, then it could well be you do shareholder buyout or whatever it might be. Just have a plan in place if something unexpectedly happens to one of the directors, and then there's the next step you can go where you can actually say, you know what, well, our advice would be to put some death cover in place for this person's as they succeed, and you have a buy-sell agreement and all those sorts of things, right? So, it's very good. It's interesting, the old plumber with the leaky tap, to say how many financial advisors out there don't have their own succession plan in place, but yet they talk about key person succession in their business.
I was literally just thinking, so when we started the business, we sat down and we did it because it's something that I had spent a lot of time talking about when I was inside an insurance company. And, the boys thought I was sort of slightly mad because the business was worth nothing. We had a total of 0 clients, but I was like, no, we need this. If something really terrible happens, I was 29, ever the optimist. If something terrible happens, we need to sort this out. And we got the insurance cover and stuff in place. But I think when you're younger, it's just one of those conversations where you're like, oh yeah, I'll do it later when there's a trigger event. But of course we know that that's not always possible. So,
and as you know, starting a business, there's a million other things to do that can easily take priority.
They're like, Jess, we need clients and you want to figure out a terms sheet and a buy-sell agreement. I'm like, yes, please. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So you had time to transition. I actually just didn't know that. And so I just wanted to learn a bit more about that, but thank you. And I can imagine that would have been a very testing time, and leadership would have been front and center a lot. So you're working on projects. What can we expect from you over, the course of 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of exciting stuff that I'm working on, and I've tended to choose projects that excited me, which is, I guess, leans into that, what's a great life look like theme of your podcast. And the first one is really around a project that I was passionate about since day dot, which is around efficiency and effectiveness in the process. And obviously, one of the bottlenecks that hold up a lot of advisors in this space is the concept of the statement of advice. And so I've been doing some work with the FPA and ASIC on producing what was affectionately known as video statements of advice to replace paper statements of advice or PDF versions of advice. And so, which sounds like a very big project, but it's actually been a project that started off with the concept that without changing any legislation or without changing any existing regulatory guidance and without introducing any new software that doesn't yet already exist in an advisor's lifespan, or that they actually know how to use, is it possible to produce a video SOA? And when I say video SOA, everybody jumps to the concept of, and because we've had 20 years of training in this, here is a one that we've prepared earlier. Go away and watch or read that, and then come back and we'll have the conversation about it. And so naturally, we produce this paper document, we send it to the client, or it might be, or present it to the client, or work through it with your client. But this is about going, no, let's actually provide the advice live in the meeting and just have all the information lined up. So sticking to a fairly strict agenda. Let's start with, making sure you can record. We've got a slide or a piece of the agenda that says this is a statement of advice, using the word statement of advice because that's a regulatory requirement. And it's for you, Jess, and it's from me, Fraser, or whatever the advice relationship is. And this is our advice provider, AFSL number, etc. Then you go through that. It's okay to record, and this is where our current position is, and this is the scope, and this is the strategy we're going to implement, and this is the products we're going to need to effectively make the strategy work. And these are all the fees and ways we get, our biases and the way we charge and the way we get paid. And if there's any commission on those, it's how it works and the numbers and the percentages. And then if there's any products being replaced, we go through that. So it's about going through the same advice in the same order you currently do, but instead of having it written in a document, you screen share. So you're saying, okay, here is my, insert software providers page here, and I can show you, and you can see, because I'm screen sharing, whether you're in person or in an online meeting, you can see that that's you, that's your details, that's what you said, that was your, health status, these are your super fund amounts, these are all the things that we discussed that you told me, and that's all accurate. And you can obviously do the inaccurate information warning at that time. But you can just say these things. You don't actually have to have them written down. You just have an agenda that you're following along. And share screens, go back to the agenda, go to the research, go back to the agenda, go to a mud map that shows the strategy, go back to the agenda, go back, and you can just have different tabs open, and you record that conversation the same way as you're recording our conversation right now. And that recording or record of the advice being provided is your recorded of you, your record of you stating the advice to me, your statement of advice.
Phrase, we need this. We need this. We need this so badly, because how many of our clients truly read the whole thing in its current version? How many of them actually get it? And is it documented? I've started recording my client meetings over the last sort of 12 months for internal purposes and file noting, etc. But I think to myself, gosh, if there's ever a dispute, surely there's no better thing than a recording of the actual discussion that was had. And I also just think it gives the person time to ask questions live and make sure that they understand it. So you might not be in a position where you can answer this, but when shall we expect said
I think I think if this is coming out, it's a March project to be presented from the Financial Planning Association. So it'll be on their website from about March. I can't give you the exact date, but if you're listening to this episode past March, then go back and have a look for it.
I've been in corporate for a long time, and the great thing that we used to do is we'd give months but not years. Are you talking about March 2022?
I'm talking about March 2022, yes.
Holy dooly. That is amazing. And then obviously it has to go through a process where AFSLs decide whether they're comfortable with it and all of the things. Yeah,
absolutely. So so it's looking at the legislation, it's looking at the legal requirements. There's obviously this decision is up to AFSL. Some AFSLs I've spoken to are pretty keen on it. They understand. Obviously if it's self-licensed, there's compliance lawyers and those things to get passed, but I think most of them also agree that having a recording, as you just said, of the file is pretty good evidence of the conversation. Plus, also you can actually I think it's a great way of demonstrating understanding or informed consent. So I could say to you, Jess, I've just explained that to you. What if you would explain it back to me in your words? How would you explain it? And then allow you to explain it back and me to think about what you're saying and go, yeah, I think you've got it, or you don't. And that's pretty critical for what was the old FASEA regulations, but the code of conduct around informed consent and understanding the information not just being disclosed. To be able to go back and then for them to be able to have a copy of that video to watch the full interview. I know you record for internal purposes, but this is about saying then I'm going to provide this video back to you, the whole conversation, no editing or cutting. So if you're chatting about, their daughter's wedding or whatever it might be, just keep the conversation going about that. It's just, that's all part of the advice process. So it's, they can be slightly longer, but you give that client a copy. And if they even want to go back and re-listen to explaining that, strategy or the products back to you, then it's in their own words.
Just do your hair nice so that it looks good for later.
Yeah, well, that's another thing too. If you let them know they're being recorded, they'll probably will do their hair nice.
What a game changer for the industry this could be. That's a phenomenal contribution, Fraser, to how we deliver advice in Australia, both from an advisor lens, a back office lens, but a client lens. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's why I was really, really proud of being able to do that work and bring that to the front, because I do actually think it can be a game changer in the way that advice is delivered and in both that understanding piece, that efficiency piece and effectiveness piece. There was client research done along the way as part of this project and the clients have all said, that's a fantastic idea. Some people still want the written document, which is fine. You can just still say, well, we can still produce the written document. It costs us X, so we just pass that charge on. For us to get a paraplanner to create that document, it would cost blah, blah, blah. Would you like us to get a copy to you? Otherwise we don't really need to have one for our file, but that's for you. There's all sorts that can be done in that space. And I think it is a bit of a game changer. And, it's certainly a bit of a passion project as well as a consulting project. That's for sure.
My brain is going absolutely berserk internally trying to figure out, like, I've immediately gone to how would we do this? How would we implement this? What would we show our members? What would we not show our members? If this comes off and licensees say yes, which, as you've rightly said, a lot of them are very comfortable with it. I think actually this gives so many advice. I mean, SOA generation is my biggest pain point inside our business, both from a time perspective for me, but also, just the sheer cost to produce it is making advice more and more expensive. And frankly, I produced this document that I think looks beautiful because we've added in all these nice pictures to keep people awake, but I just have to take members through it. And I honestly think to myself, they're not going to read this. I know that they're not going to read this. So, I think if this does happen, anyone who's giving advice is probably going to spend quite a bit of time reinvigorating their process to adapt. We've all adapted to online, and we've been shown that our clients can adapt to online when they're forced to as well. I think this is the perfect time to be releasing or launching something like that. So I just want to say, if this comes off in the way that you're saying it, a huge thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Like the cost thing, you mentioned the cost thing there, and I agree with that. Like, to me, there's a value chain in our businesses that at one end of the chain is the shareholder and the other end of the chain is the client. And when it comes to cost, any inefficiency is either borne by the shareholder or the client. There's no one in the middle of the process or the value chain that picks up the cost except for the shareholder or the client. So I think this is going to relieve a little bit of cost from the advice point of view, and hopefully it can reduce some of the cost for the clients.
So exciting. Can't wait. Please keep me updated. But that's not all you're working on this year. You've got some other exciting projects that you're up to.
No, I think those people that know me understand that I normally work on 4 or 5 different projects at once. But the 2 big ones for me this year is obviously getting the SOA project out and helping practices implement it, or helping licensees get their heads around it, because there's a massive mind shift that has to take place when you've had 20 years of conditioning. Since financial services reform came in, on this is a statement of advice. This is how we do it. We had the modern technology back in the day was Microsoft Word, and so that was what we had. We took on, and we created, these big Word documents, and that's what we've been doing ever since. So there's a huge mindset shift that has to take place. And the other thing that I'm doing is helping advisors set their practices up to more securely look after their client data. I remember, it's currently called the Cyber Collective, and it's coming out again around March 2022. And I think back to the days when we had paper files, and we used to lock those files in filing cabinets, and then you'd lock the office door, and there was a double lock between the client's personal financial and medical data, because let's face it, if you do a personal statement, you're holding on to both. Then which is a really sought after thing. But nowadays we've got it all online, and anybody, any hacker from around the world can basically break into our system and steal our clients' confidential and private data. So the location thing's not a problem for them. The level of security is not really a problem for them. And I think it's a huge risk to a lot of businesses. So just helping advisors to be able to shore up that side of their business. There's never going to be a perfect solution when it comes to cyber hackers, but it's certainly a whole lot of steps, and as Asset would say, reasonable steps you could take to securing that data online.
Yeah, it is something that keeps me awake at night sometimes. Sometimes it's really easy to spot, and then you hear stories about how sophisticated and complicated some of these sort of hacks are, and for me, I just worry. I just think, God, it's just you're one click away potentially from doing something that could be really detrimental, not only to releasing data, but to losing trust and credibility. And it's very scary.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? One click away, it could be you, or one click from any of your staff as well. So it's one of those scenarios that, losing your client data is bad, because obviously most advisors are in this business to help people, so they're wanting to be helping their clients, and you're one click away from losing that. But also, as you mentioned, the trust factor. There's the loss of reputation and possibly the loss of business valuation as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm quietly increasing my temperature here as I'm sitting here just thinking about that.
Yeah. I'll give you the good news on the SOA, and then I'll give you the bad. I'll say about the bad news.
Yeah, we should have done it the other way around. Never mind. Amazing. And we wish you all the very best. They sound like really exciting projects. And as I said, they sound like things that are going to have a big impact on our community. So a giant thank you. Given that you've been doing the podcast for a while, and you have such a breadth of people that you've spoken to and topics and insights that you've covered, I sort of wanted to go quite broad and talk to you about, what have you seen to be the best changes, or what are you seeing as like the most exciting pieces of the industry from the people that you've interviewed thus far?
Yeah, I think the big thing to me over, I don't know, what have we got now, for nearly 5 years, is the evolution from just about providing advice to different business models, different people looking at different industries. I know you guys did this when you started out. You went, what are other professions or industries do in their business that game changers. So things like introducing or really focusing on your member first or client experience, looking at that wellness and balancing. There's been a lot of conversations around the amount of stress and how people are coping with stress, around mental flexibility. I really enjoyed that part of the conversations. I enjoy conversations when I speak to people and I go, oh, you take that concept from this industry and you've implemented it, and oh wow, then that really works. So any of those, to me, it's always been around, helpful hints. If it's or good points, like it's always been around what's someone doing in their business that's just like, oh, that's a good point. I never really thought of that. And so to me, when it comes to producing any type of content, it's around going, try and find some useful points and things that people are doing and bring that to the conversation. And I always say that sometimes if there's no points, there's no point in the conversation. But I think stories, everybody likes hearing somebody else's story or what they're doing, where they're at. I think there's always a lot of benchmarking that goes on. If you're siloed in a business and you're not really sure, then the podcast and those sorts of things are great for that sort of, oh, you're doing that too. Oh, you've had that same problem as I do. Oh, well, that's great. And then this is how you overcame it. That's a good idea. So often some of the best parts of a podcast is not just about wins. It's about things that didn't go right, obstacles overcome, those sorts of things. So yeah, there's been plenty of conversations over many years where I've just gone, wow, that's really cool. That's a great way to run your business or do something that's different. So yeah, anything that's sort of slightly different that puts the client first, anything that's great for businesses and staff. And I read a saying the other ages ago that I really loved, and that was around teamwork, and that, teams are a group of people that trust each other, not people that work together. And so there's all sorts of things that you pick up along the way that I think when you're a host of a podcast, you actually get to see this gold all the time, because you're constantly talking to people about it and having those conversations with purpose. Because often when you're having conversations with, I'll catch up with you, we'll say good day, have chat, but we don't go into the those deeper points like, tell me about your history coming through, or tell me about that moment in your life.
It would probably be quite weird and somewhat interrogative if I went up to people who I haven't seen in a while and said, right, tell me your story.
Yeah. So in a podcast, you have every excuse to do so. Yeah,
exactly. That's why I'm very excited, because, I'm a nosy, curious person. It's so, just listening to what you were saying around the wellness piece and the idea that people are picking up great concepts from other industries and inserting them, or trying to figure out how to insert them into what they do. I just, my immediate thought was, how do we make space and time for this, innovative thinking and this deep learning about what other people are doing? Because often when we get busy, we're just so focused and siloed on, the work at hand. But yeah, I'm delighted to hopefully keep that momentum going and learning more. But it's not all rosy. And I think it would be remiss of us to not talk about some of the big challenges. And some of the tough stuff that's happening for our industry as well. Given that you, again, have spoken to so many people, what are you noticing are sort of the main pain points or challenges or frustrations that our lovely little community is facing?
Yeah, I think the big one's always been uncertainty. It's not like we have, look, there's a lot to love about what's right about the profession, and often sometimes we tend to focus on the negative parts because they're pressing. But I'd say, just the idea that, when a profession's 20 years old and it has rules that have been very similar for 15 or 20 years, then there is some sort of certainty around what the future might look like. And obviously we've been through a lot of rapid change, which means, we don't quite know how it's going to land. We know that some stuff will be right and some stuff will be wrong and need tweaking over the years. But in the meantime, it's painful and it hurts and it's inefficient or whatever it might be. So look, I think that's probably one of the biggest pain points is around that around that just uncertainty of not knowing how it's all going to turn out. And whether that's changes in products, whether that's, changes in the way you have to do business and additional work that you need to do and box ticking and all those sorts of things. But I guess all of those things come back to, and you'd know this with all the research you've done in the past, it's around attitude. It's around how you approach those from a mental flexibility point of view. There's always going to be obstacles. It's just whether you see it as an obstacle or whether you see it as a way to improve and sometimes you have to vent a little bit and then you can sit back and go, right, that's right now I can actually sit back and I've done my little bit of venting, so now I can go and work out how to get around it or move over it or build a bridge or use it as a positive.
I was just thinking as you were talking about that, I just want to sort of say very loudly, we're tough. To work in the financial services industry today, irrespective of what your role is, you're tough. Like, we've been put through a lot, and I don't think we often give ourselves enough credit because we're also part-time counselor and marriage consultant and all these things. And sometimes we end a day and I feel quite drained, and I don't think we spend enough time, given that there's all this regulatory complexity and economic uncertainty and all these sort of things that are thrown at us, this constant barrage. I think it's important to acknowledge, irrespective of how you're feeling, because some days it does not feel good. Like, we're tough to be in this industry and to be able to continue to get up every day and do what you do. I think inherently you've got to have a lot of determination and tenacity and care.
Yeah, absolutely, and purpose. I think it's you mentioned that you're tough. It's not the only role that advisors play. They're an advisor, but they also might be a partner or a husband or a wife or a mother or a father or a brother or a sister or whatever it might be. You've got all these other roles to play, and so you've got things to juggle. But also, I think there are a lot of obstacles, but it comes back down to that purpose-driven ideal that why are you there? You're there to help people. You're there because you can help people. So you feel the obligation and the need and the want and the desire to do so.
Or you could be the owner of a Lagotto like me, who is constantly demanding attention and additional walks. And I hope she does not feature on future podcasts, but I suspect that she will.
Of course she will.
Oh, dear. So that's probably comes to my next point, which is, Fraser, I am trying to solve this very big, complex problem that is possibly unsolvable around how to live a great life. What do you think? What do you think are the key elements?
I think the key elements are having purpose or direction. I think the key elements are understanding what your own values are. So if you know and you then can think about what other things that what drive you as a human being and understand what your values are. I think aligning your values with the people around you, whether that's in relationships or whether it's partnerships or business or clients or whatever it might be, then that would be, a great start towards living a happy, healthy life. And that is very much around that values alignment. It doesn't have to be necessarily your goals alignment or all those sorts of things. You can still have different goals, but be aligned with values. And then a lot of the rest of it comes back down to, communication, I think, as well. It's very for people that communicate a lot, it's probably a little bit easier than those that bottle it up.
Do you know what I've been grappling with lately? This idea that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you like it. And if you are a challenge-oriented person, which I am, it's actually very conflicting to go back and think, did I really like that thing, or did I like it because I was good at it and I got praise and I overcame the challenge and I got accolades for it? It's a very confronting thought process that I'm currently grappling with. So there you go. But I think you're right, to your values piece. And we talk a lot about this every day. Like, it should just drive everything. It should be at our center. And yet we spend almost no time actively and importantly sitting down and talking about it and understanding it and noticing where there's conflicts, both from a personal relationship perspective, but if you've got a business partner or you work in a team, like understanding what drives everyone, so that, we understand good behavior, but we also understand behavior that maybe isn't perfect, because we are, alas, imperfect beings.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not you, just me.
Oh, no, we all are. We all are.
So I have some rapid fire questions.
Yes, let's go. Let's do it.
I think I want to use these. We might iterate them. If you're listening to this and you think that's a terrible question, change it. Let me know, because this is my first one. Or if you think you want me to ask extra questions, I'm all about it. But because I'm trying to tackle this from a holistic perspective, I thought I would sort of fire some potentially weird ones at you. So take a deep breath.
Fire away.
What do you do to look after your mental health?
Sleep. And so once, like, it could just be making sure that you got lots of sleep, sleep, food, a little bit of gut health, a bit of mental flexibility, stopping and going backwards and forth a few times and looking at things from every different angle. As in, that's my opinion, but what could another opinion be, or what could somebody else that they be coming from? That often helps with conflict and understanding and forgiving. I have a saying that I don't like to be the victim. So if you can't do the blame game, or you can't make it anything anybody else's fault. Otherwise, you're the victim. So you can't not be the victim without someone taking on everything.
What if you are the victim? What if you are the victim? What if you just wanted someone to be saying, "No, it's okay"? Then
if you play that game, then you're at effect of something other else is causing. So the idea is, if you wanted to have complete control, then you just say, "Oh, that was my thing. Like, I probably could have done better, or I could have recognized that sooner." Everything's a journey. So a little bit of that, a little bit of physical, a little bit of mental, but I think mental flexibility is a big part of that. And just taking the time out of whatever you're doing to look at things from different angles and be happy with stuff. I think happiness is one of those things that, you look at great life. I think happiness is one of those things that, if you're watching too much news or getting too deep into something, you're not going to be happy. And there's also that saying around happiness that if you can actually be happy with what you have, rather than be happy with all the things you don't have, or unhappy about things not having stuff. So, yeah.
We look at comparisonitis with our clients, but there's a bucket load of it in our industry as well. Fascinating that you answered. One of the things I didn't expect you to answer when I asked about mental health was gut health, because there's so much research now that gut health plays a big part in mental health. Just quickly, what are you doing with gut health? I need to know.
Oh, so it's just from a dietary point of view, I do intermittent eating. I don't eat in the mornings. I'll just eat in the afternoons and evenings, and I'm not too serious about it all. I just try to eat things that are good for your gut health, and make kombucha and do those things. And yeah, just I'm not saying it's something that I'm not gonna become an evangelist about, but it's just one thing. Those are little things that you just think about from time to time and make positive decisions around it.
Wow. No, I asked you. I don't think I could fast. I think my hangry levels would be out of control and no one would want to talk to me. But fascinating. And kombucha and the fermented stuff is really interesting as well. And that's an easy one, but if you don't make it, which it sounds like you do, you can just go and buy it. Okay, my next rapid fire question for you. Are you ready?
Yep, let's do it. What
is just one thing that you would tell Fraser if you could go back in time? What would you tell young Fraser?
I would say pretty much I'm pretty happy with all of the mental work that I've done. So, but I would just say keep developing. Whether it's study, whether it's stuff around your mental health, whether it's, all those sorts of things, just keep learning, being inquisitive and learn.
Great one. I'm hoping you've got a bucket list or semi-bucket list, and I want to know what's one thing that you're yet to tick off that's on there.
So some of the things on my bucket list have evolved around lifestyle. So, the work that I'm doing is evolved to be online. and so therefore I can work anywhere in the world. So one of the things I'd like to do over my career is to be able to, go to Spain for a month and still work and get to know a small country town, and, spend a bit of quality time and get to know locals. So whether that's Spain or whether it's someplace in, South America or whether it's Canada or whether it's, somewhere in some other part of the world, it's just about traveling and being able to work from anywhere.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. I look forward to knowing when you're going because we've got to do the things.
Yep, absolutely.
And then my last rapid fire question to you is, do you have a book that I can put on my hit list to read as part of my fake book club? Oh, I've started a fake book club, which is basically people just tell me what to read and then I'll just go away and attempt to read it. I'm a ferocious reader, as I've been told. And I've got a pretty long list, but yeah, what's one book you'd tell me to add?
Yeah, so there's probably lots here, but I'm not a ferocious reader, but I love listening to the audiobooks. So to me, probably the one, there's a few I really enjoy. The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek is a really, really cool one. That's it's all around leadership and understanding it's both about business as well as personal a way of living and flexibility. From a business point of view, I like things like The Story Brand by Donald Miller, or any sort of marketing books by Seth Godin. So yeah, I would say if it was one, it would be The Infinite Game.
Thank you. I'm adding that to the list. I saw a purple cow skip the other day, and I thought that person's read Simon Sinek's book, and just thought, you know what, I'm making a skip business out of that, which I found hilarious.
Yeah.
Just sort of rounding out today's conversation, I want to say on behalf of the community who listen to your Thursday slots, a giant thank you for all of the insights that you have poured into our ears and therefore our brains, and no doubt has created capacity and change and insight and innovation in people's businesses. Glenn, my business partner, gets very grumpy and sort of is hesitant for me to listen to your podcasts regularly because I come out with 7,000 things that I want to change, and he's like, add it to the list. I'm like, no, I don't want to add it to the list. I want to just do it, which poor man has to then cope with. But I do want to say a giant thank you. We're very excited for you to be rolling out sort of your special edition, special features component of XY, where you get really deep and niche on a broad range of topics depending on sort of what comes up. No doubt you're going to be an amazing investigative podcaster. And I want to say thank you from me personally for being my first podcast guest.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Ray.